y'all, welcome back to my channel for today's video where I am doing what I love to do best, which is debunk random shit that I see that I feel like people just don't get, because I am just hyper aware of how people like to get involved with things that they just don't understand, like the depth of what they're doing, saying, thinking, believing, all that jazz. So a lot of the time it is my motivation on this channel to just bring awareness to maybe some of the misconceptions that I'm seeing. And that's why you can tell by the title of this video that we are going to be talking about different ways that I see people using astrology wrong, or just not getting it, and just providing a little bit more clarity around some of those topics, because there's obviously a reason why they got misconstrued how they did. And I think you can just accredit that to anything that becomes popularized at any point in time starts becoming a little bit more superficial. And I can say personally that over the last year specifically, I think astrology or spirituality, metaphysics, divination, everything like that has gotten to be quite trendy, and it's really interesting to somebody that does this for a living, to say the least. But yeah, gather your emotional support drink and maybe a little puppy to pet on the side, and we are going to dive into this. As always, like this video if you like this kind of content, and subscribe for more from me. First things first, this is one of the biggest things that I advocate for in astrology, because coming into astrology, this was one of the biggest stigmas that you would see everywhere, which is the whole idea about hate or slander accredited to a specific zodiac sign. Specifically, I'm talking about those people that say,
I hate Geminis,
or because
you're an Aries, you're a bitch.
Like, no, absolutely not. That is not how astrology works. And it's honestly kind of disrespectful to take it just from that kind of superficial of an angle. There's a few things to note about this on why it's just kind of a wacky thing to do. Number one being that we all have every single energy in our chart. You can see here for yourself by this chart that there is every single zodiac sign in this circle. Now, you don't have a planet necessarily in every single zodiac sign, but that zodiac sign falls in a house or on a house cusp for every single person, meaning that attitude or that general energy in life represented by that zodiac sign does play out for every single person in a different area of life. It just depends on your chart on how prevalent it is and where specifically you'll see it show up. In other words, I am blatantly telling you right now that if you say that any zodiac sign sucks, just flat out, you are actually just being silly, bud, because you yourself have that energy. And if anything, that just shows that you personally don't know how to develop that energy in a way where you can get along with it appropriately within yourself and out in the world with others. So please take note of, one, anybody that tries to take that angle about a zodiac sign, because that clearly shows a lack of understanding on their part, but then also see how that might give you some kind of insight on how you're working with energies for yourself. For example, let's say that you're a Cancer sun, and every Aries sun that you meet causes you this amount of like tension and stress. Well, I mean, that makes sense given the fact that Aries squares Cancer energy, so naturally that tension will arise. However, with every difficult thing going on in astrology, it's just a lesson for you to learn how to integrate that energy into the other energy. For example, in this context, an Aries sun might be way more assertive than the Cancer sun, which makes them feel kind of weird because they're trying to do things from a lot more reserved place. However, the Cancer sun could learn from that and learn to be more assertive or more forthright, which you could see might actually benefit them in the area of life that they have Aries energy, especially if that person were to like natally have Aries energy too. Like, that makes it even more important. Next up we need to talk about is cusp. Being on a cusp. For example, people that are like,
oh, I'm a Libra Scorpio cusp,
or I'm a Cancer Leo cusp.
Now, firstly, let me just say it's not that I don't believe in cusp, because they are what they are. In this context in astrology, being born on a cusp just means that you're born around the time that the sun is switching signs, meaning that the exact time that you're born is going to be extra crucial because you're in that, transition period. And it's also important to note that that transition period, those specific days and times change. And why is that? Well, because astrology is based on math. Each zodiac sign is from 0 degrees to 29 degrees, so 12 of those makes up a 360-degree circle. However, there are 365 days in the year, meaning that things are going to shift on a yearly basis because of that misalignment. For example, let's say you were born on January 18th. At one point in time that might be Capricorn energy, but at another point in time that might be Aquarius energy, where eventually, even though you're natally, like a Capricorn, it could eventually become where your birthday falls into Aquarius season. That's really what they mean by being born on a cusp. So in a way, with just leaving it as I'm a cusp, it's basically just saying that you haven't calculated the exact astrology and natal chart to see what your placement is. And another thing to know about the whole cusp things is that there's a lot of people that I notice will accredit feeling the dual energy of both signs strictly because they were born on the cusp. Which, if we go back to what I was saying about actually getting your natal chart and actually seeing what specific degree your sun sign falls in, there's really not much room for any gray area there, because you're literally going to be one sign or the other. And if you find out that you're one sign or the other, but you still feel like you have qualities that represent that other sign, look elsewhere in your chart. I'm serious, I have debunked this on every single person who swore to me that they were definitely a cusp. Literally within seconds of looking at their placements or their chart, I was able to accredit that energy to something else in the chart. So I'm telling you right now, if you are looking into astrology, you may be a cusp, but that is not the end all be all of what that means. So like I was saying, at most, being on a cusp just means that your birth time matters more. To get the specifics of even your sun sign, it's called being on the cusp because you need to note it as a transition point because of how things will change and how your birthday might not always fall in that same exact season. And when figuring out where other zodiac sign energy goes, it's important to factor in not only the other placements and planets that you have, but also look at planetary aspects or how certain planets are hitting angles or what your chart ruler is, because those are going to be way more telling of the dominance of your energy, way more than your sun sign ever will or a cusp ever will. I don't know how else to explain that being on a cusp is just simply not a completely thought through thought. Like, saying you're a cusp is basically like if someone were to ask you where you're from and you just say the United States instead of just saying like I'm from Michigan or I'm from Indiana. You're basically giving a region when people are asking for a specific, which again is fine, and it's not like you can't believe in cusp because they are just what they are, but it's not the end all be all. My next complaint about where I see people using astrology wrong is when people talk about energies as being bad, or saying, oh, because of this Saturn transit, you're going to be depressed, or because of Uranus, you're going to be anxious. Like, that is one side of the coin, but that's not the whole coin. And if you're seeing that as the whole coin, then you're not getting the true potential and value out of the certain transit periods that you're going through. Basically, if a transit feels hard and you feel disoriented and things are not going accordingly to you, it's not just the planets, it's probably also you not utilizing the energy appropriately and most efficiently. And because the planets go through cycles, that energy will come back and bite you if you don't deal with it the first time, or don't deal with it in the different ways that it tries to show up for you before it starts to tumble into worse and worse things. I'll use my personal experience with Saturn for an example here. So I personally have my natal moon and Venus opposing my natal Saturn. In the fashion that oppositions work, sometimes you just favor one side of the opposition more than the other until a snap happens where you're like, oh shit, I'm faced with this opposition that I have to learn either how to integrate it into my life, or I'm just going to see it as an opposition. Now, because my Saturn is in Aries and it's in the 8th house, and my moon Venus is in Libra in the 2nd house, I basically found if I was being too passive, too diplomatic, too agreeable, basically, more Libra moon Venus qualities, and neglected this Aries Saturn in the 8th house, which was more confident, just going alone at certain things that they knew were going to bring them transformation and more power, I would eventually find myself being depressed, because Saturn in its more negative context brings depression. It brings a suppressed energy towards what it's touching, which was my moon, which is my emotional energy, and Venus, which was my sense of self-value. And because we attract the energy that we are and where we at in this lifetime, it's really easy to get caught in that cycle of, oh God, like this Saturn is just bringing me down. I remember going through this past Saturn square where I finally realized and started to work with and appreciate the karmic aspects of this energy, of Saturn, or of this kind of like oppressing, depressing feeling that you get from Saturn energy. The depression of Saturn is literally the flip side of working towards your goals. So because I wasn't working towards my personal goals and instead was kind of following along with the expectations of other people, some Libra qualities, I would start feeling depressed. But like I said, once I personally decided to change my mentality about things, basically change the emotional undertone, because Saturn was tied with the moon, and also the way I appreciated myself because it's also tied with Venus, I was able to reroute this depressed energy into something that was like more dutiful, more determined, which is very similar energies. They all fall under the same umbrella in astrology. So paying attention to that is kind of the key to being able to utilize energies so they don't terrorize you every time they come around. That way, when you go through a Pluto or Uranus or Mars or Chiron transit, you're not going to be worried about it because you'll feel that sense of empowerment that comes with some of these more challenging dynamics. That's one thing I advocate for so much for on my channel and in my life in general, which is the fact that bad energies in your life are actually ones that when you use them can be the most empowering. But when you don't use them and you let them kind of control the narrative for you on how your empowerment can be found, that's when things start to get shitty and start to feel sticky and hard. And then it just becomes easy to be victimized by circumstances, when in reality, circumstances are always working for you if you want to work with them. Next up kind of goes to the whole blame game energy that's just completely stigmatized with astrology. And honestly, it's rightfully stigmatized with astrology because people do this to the point where I'm even annoyed, and I love astrology. And that is the people that try to use their astrology as a scapegoat for why the fuck they did what they did. Y'all, I cannot stand a bitch that's like,
It's because I'm a Sagittarius, or it's just because I'm a Libra.
like, no. Astrology is not a because as much as it is a why or what for. As in, why am I wired like this, and what good can this be used for? Or what better can this be used for, rather than,
This is just who I am.
that is honestly some of the most cringy shit that I see with astrology, because it essentially is just using astrology like every other religious kind of scapegoat, where basically you can assign responsibility to a higher power and say, oh, it's not me, this is just the energy I've been given and I'm working with it and I can be redeemed because that's just who I am. I'll tell you right now, astrology is not a place to redeem your bad qualities. If anything, it is a place to show you that your bad qualities are actually supposed to be good qualities if you knew how to use them appropriately. Like, yes, obviously it's nice to read about your zodiac sign and see like, wow, oh, this is why I am the way I am. But every zodiac sign is on a sliding scale of consciousness where you can be just like that archetype, but that archetype can also be many different things. A perfect explanation for this could be like, let's say a Pisces, because Pisces is often tied with the martyr energy. And right off the bat, the term martyr might have a negative connotation, or if you see it in a more like spiritual, pure context, it's actually a very selfless energy. It's very devoted and loyal. So very easily a Pisces could be like, oh, it's because I'm a Pisces, I'm a psychic sponge, so I just feel the need to, help everybody around me. No, I mean, yeah, that's kind of true, but only to a degree before you need to go back to the actual development of how that archetype is functioning. Because I'll tell you right now, just because you're a Pisces doesn't mean you have to let people walk all over you. Actually, if anything, if you're a Pisces, then it means you should be learning a way to kind of selflessly devote yourself to things. So is it really something that you can use to blame in an ego-preserving way, or does it just help you explain more of how you can start moving better in the world around you? Maybe that's my Virgo approach to things, taking information and wanting to do something better with it, but that's exactly what astrology provides for us, so why not? Alright, also let's talk about the whole tropical versus sidereal astrology, Vedic astrology, whatever, because I actually have this question come up so much, like which is better, whatever. Like some people just fight to the death about either or, and I've said this before and I'm gonna say it again, it doesn't fucking matter. Literally whatever you prefer is the route for you to go, because if it is a system that works, it fucking works. And when it comes to this topic, people are using astrology wrong because they don't seem to understand the very basic conclusion you can make from any study of astrology, any angle you take, which is that everybody is going to have their own preferred routes of finding information. So any astrologer that doesn't get that, that's going to sit there and like shove one route of astrology down your throat, like they're missing the point. Yes, calculations are made differently, and yes, the methods can be different as well, but that doesn't take away from the essence of what everything is trying to do. It's basically like, how can you take an Enneagram test or like the 16 personalities test and then also do like a human design thing, and how you can still find pretty much the same essence in every kind of like self-discovery technique there is out there, and that's no different for the different kinds of astrology. So by no means does there need to be any war about that, and that's where I think y'all be using astrology wrong if you're trying to use it as a way to be you versus me against other people. Okay, the last little thing that I'm going to bitch about in today's video is how people use astrology for compatibility. It is never, and I repeat, never about, is this person right for me or not based on astrology. Point blank, you literally just will never be able to tell if someone is right for you or not based on an astrological reading. Because relationship readings, or synastry readings as we call them in astrology, or even composite charts, or the other kind of relationship charts that you can do in astrology, only can show you the dynamics that will play out and maybe the feelings that come from those dynamics. Is there any meant to be kind of aspects in astrology? I really don't fucking think so, because I've seen plenty of relationship charts that don't look like they would get along well, and the couple is doing great because they figure out how to work and integrate with each other's energies, versus a couple that may have really easy aspects and everything might look destined and fated on paper, but in reality it's not that. It's more of a learning lesson than it is some kind of like long-term fated reality. And yes, in astrology, because every placement and whatnot can give you specific you know, undertones and, like I said, dynamics for how somebody's going to feel and act within a certain situation. Every human can make their own decisions. So if they feel like one day, hey, I don't really feel like dealing with this energy anymore, and they don't want to, that's okay. And would you be able to see that in a chart? I mean, yeah, there's some indications that you would be able to see kind of different sporadic dynamics, like I said, playing out in a chart. But specifically the element of like fate or, you know, true compatibility based on astrology, it's just, that's not what it's meant for. It's meant to show you the different dynamics and basically give you a clearer picture on how you might be actually feeling about a certain energy that they're presenting you. It gives you those kind of specifics so then you can learn to work with it or learn to leave it if that's not something that you really want to get involved in. It's all your personal preference, and that's, again, something you learn from astrology when you're using it the right way and you're viewing things from this new awareness that you gain through learning astrology. But yeah, I feel like that covered kind of all the little like things that I have written down over here about just the random things that I see people doing wrong in astrology. Like, I genuinely don't mean to gatekeep or just be super anal about this stuff, but when you see people twist this information to kind of fit a certain agenda, it can be kind of frustrating when you've actually taken the time to learn more specifics about things. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is to offer you some informational 2 cents through this rant. So if you liked it and want to see more, like I said, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more information, more content and stuff like this. Check out my other social medias, of course, linked down below as always, because I am always dinking around on the internet somewhere, so you can find me there. But yeah, I will see you guys in a later video. Peace.